This is based on publicly available information, media reports, eyewitness accounts, and public records related to the Bombolulu Girls Secondary School high school dormitory fire in Kenya. It has been written with the highest respect for the victims, their families, and the broader community affected by the tragedy. The events described are real, and while names and dialogue may be reconstructed for clarity and narrative flow, no part of this story is intended to sensationalize or misrepresent. This work is for educational and storytelling purposes, to document a crime, to remember the lives lost, and to raise urgent questions about safety, accountability, and youth justice in Kenya's school system. The dorm was silent, a stillness wrapped around the beds like a blanket. Dozens of schoolgirls lay asleep, breathing the soft, dream-filled rhythm of childhood. Then the door slammed shut, locked. From the outside, a match was struck, and moments later, the night exploded into flame. This wasn't an accident, it wasn't a faulty wire or a forgotten candle, it was arson, cold, calculated, and cruel, and the people behind it were not strangers. They were fellow students, girls who had sat in the same classes, worn the same uniform, and now had decided to burn their dorm mates alive. This is the story of the Bombolulu Girls Secondary School arson attack, of the daughters who never saw morning, of the mothers who buried uniforms instead of graduates, of the school that became a crime scene overnight. This book is not just about what happened, it's about why it happened, how it unfolded, and the lives lost in the fire, both literally and emotionally. Some girls died, some survived, but would never be the same. We remember them here. We tell their story now. Bombolulu Girls Secondary School stood quietly on the coastal belt of Kenya, tucked near Mazeras, surrounded by rustling trees and red earth. For many girls it wasn't just a school, it was a promise, a path to something better, a place where they could dream, laugh, compete, and grow into the women their families hoped they would become. Most of the girls came from humble homes. Some were the first in their families to attend secondary school, and in that dormitory where feet tapped quietly on cold floors and whispers carried long into the night, they shared secrets, dreams, prayers, and plans. The dorm was home. The bunk beds were more than frames, they were safe spaces, until they weren't. Like many boarding schools in Kenya, Bombolulu Girls Secondary School operated under structure. Morning bells, inspections, preps, exams, and dormitories that were often overcrowded. That year the school had well over 700 students, and like many schools of the time, the pressure was immense to succeed, to behave, to conform. Behind the routine were challenges: overcrowding in sleeping areas, grilled windows for security, dormitory doors locked from outside at night, often just to keep girls from sneaking out, some would later say. It was normal until it wasn't. They were just girls, girls who braided each other's hair, girls who giggled under mosquito nets when the matron's back was turned, girls who wrote in diaries and passed notes in class, girls who had dreams of becoming teachers, pilots, nurses, lawyers. Some were preparing for exams, some were new Form 1 students still adjusting. All were daughters, some were sisters, and all were children. What many didn't see or didn't take seriously was the undercurrent of frustration. There were murmurs about discipline, about hard girls forming secret alliances, about a handful of students, not many, who resented authority, rebelled in small ways, whispered of revenge. There had been tensions, yes, but no one imagined they'd boil over into violence, let alone something so dark, so final, and so horrifying. In the lead-up to the fire, no alarm was sounded. No siren rang. Life went on as it always had. Until the night of March 25th, 1998, a night that would rewrite the school's history forever. A night when some girls lit matches and others never woke up. It was a Sunday evening, March 25th, 1998. Prep had ended, supper had been served. The girls of Bombolulu Girls Secondary School had done what they always did on nights like this, returned to their dormitories, chatting softly, unwinding, preparing for another week of schoolwork. The dormitory settled into its usual hum, footsteps on cement, beds creaking, laughter in corners, prayers whispered under blankets, and then, silence. The kind of silence that comes just before something breaks. As was standard practice at the time in many Kenyan boarding schools, the dormitory doors were locked from the outside once lights out was declared. Security, they said, to prevent sneaking out, to enforce discipline. But that night, the locked doors would become death traps. Inside the dorm were nearly 130 girls. Some had already drifted to sleep. Others sat on beds, reading quietly by flashlight. Outside, in the shadows, 3 girls crept toward the dormitory with a plan already made. They didn't bring weapons, they brought matches and fuel. The fire started small, deliberately lit near the entrance of the dormitory. It grew fast, fed by mattresses, wooden bed frames, bedding, shoes, and books. The flames rushed like a tide, licking up the walls, blackening the ceiling. Inside the dorm, it took seconds for confusion to turn into panic. Girls woke up coughing, screaming. Some ran for the door but it wouldn't open, locked from the outside. Others tried the windows but they were grilled with metal bars. Smoke swallowed the dormitory. The fire roared louder than the screams. The girls began piling toward the exit, pushing, clawing, pleading, but with the only door sealed, the pressure crushed those at the front. Some were trampled, some were suffocated, some were burned alive as they were unable to escape the flames that now danced on the ceiling above them. By the time help arrived, it was too late for many. Teachers and staff broke windows, tried to put out the fire, carried limp bodies out of the building. But 67 girls were injured, and 58 never made it out alive. Their dorm, once filled with dreams and giggles, was now a blackened ruin. News of the fire broke like a wave across Kenya. Parents rushed to the school, some hopeful, others terrified. Some were handed their daughters' belongings, others were told nothing. They simply waited, prayed, and collapsed when the list came out. 58 names, 58 girls who had gone to sleep and never woke up. The Bombolulu Girls Secondary School fire became one of the worst school tragedies in Kenya's history. And one of the most painful questions began to surface. How did this happen? And why?